Well, I'm going to welcome everyone to this subcommittee, the INE subcommittee of the PAC. I'm Barb, I'm the co-chair. I don't know if Aaron's here yet, but he should be coming. Hopefully he'll take minutes. I want to read the notice. Members of the board may participate remotely by telephone or other electronic means due to the local public health emergency novel coronavirus pandemic declared on March 16th, 2020, pursuant to the provisions of Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021. So I want to welcome all of you. There's some business I'd like to take care of before we start with our presenter. Aaron and I met with Matthew and Chris and talked a little bit about organizing the INE, because generally we don't just have one presenter. That's very unusual. Usually, historically, we can have somewhere between 4 and sometimes even 6 presenters, and we have an hour and a half. So we're really trying to look at how we can make this meeting a little bit more efficient and make sure that some people that are quieter and less likely to talk have an opportunity to talk. So a couple of things that we'd like to do. Use the hand raising thing for those people that are here on the computer. Certainly anybody that's here on the telephone is welcome to wait for somebody to stop and then jump in if they have a question or a comment. We'd like to limit a question to one at a time and then go back in the queue for asking another question. And sometimes during a meeting, if we feel like we want to do a roll call, we might just call on members of the team that have not yet offered a comment or had an opportunity to share a question. So we're going to try to make this a little bit more coordinated and organized so that everyone gets a chance to say what they might want to say. So thank you for listening to that. The other thing I'd like to say is that this has been a hard week. And I think many of us are feeling how hard this week has been with the death of Duane Wright. And so I know I'm feeling it. It's been very stressful. And I'm sure I'm a white person. If I were a person of color, this would be even a harder week. So I'm just sharing that and saying, let's all be aware of, we might be in a mood or so. So anyway, why don't we start? Our presenter today is the 37th Avenue Northeast. And I thought it's not Forrest. Is it Forrest? Are you presenting? I can't, somebody's mute. I think you're mute, Forrest.
Oh yeah, that's Barb, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, take it away. Thank you.
So I'm Forrest Hardy, Transportation Planning and Programming in Minneapolis Public Works. Alabel is also with us here today. He's our Transportation Planning Engineer. And then Heather and Casey from SEH. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Hi. Am I unmuted? Yep. Hi, I'm Heather Kienitz. I'm a multimodal traffic engineer with SEH.
Hi, I'm Casey Atkins. I'm a multimodal transportation engineer with SEH.
Welcome.
Great. So before we jump into the layout, I just have a couple of slides here of project background that we've maybe seen before, but it's been a while since we've been here, so I just wanted to go over that again. The project, 37th Avenue Northeast reconstruction. It's from Central Avenue in the west to Stinson Boulevard in the east. It's a truck route. It's 2 lanes today in either direction, 1 lane in either direction with parking on both sides. It'll be a complete reconstruction. The project background, it's a 2023 project. Will be constructed in 2023. Complete replacement of the pavement, curb and gutter with a sidewalk on the south side and trail as well, likely on the north side. Safety improvements include, or the improvements to the corridor include safety improvements for the street, greening and other stormwater enhancements. There are several project partners. The City of Columbia Heights is a major partner in the project because it's this project borders Columbia Heights, so they're therefore have jurisdiction over half of the roadway. And then the City of St. Anthony has jurisdiction in the east, at the east limit of Stinson Boulevard. and Hennepin County because Stinson is a county roadway as well. Next slide. Our project goals are to improve safety for all users of 37th Ave Northeast, no matter how they get around, to connect employment centers and truck corridors. This project is near the intermodal, freight and intermodal hub, Northeast at Central and 28th. Provide substantial investment and transportation benefit to those users as well. And the project schedule is a 2018 regional solicitation, was where we received federal funds for the project. In 2020 and early 21, we've been doing engagement and developing concepts. And then spring of 21, which is now, we'll be developing the concept design and finalizing that and going through layout approval early summer. And final design will begin shortly thereafter. Okay.
With that, we wanted to highlight a few things and share the current layout with you. We believe the last time you saw this, there were actually two different options, one with a trail on the south side and one with a trail on the north side. Since then, we've proceeded with the trail on the north side of 37th, mainly because of that connectivity to the existing trails on 37th to the west, as well as existing trails off of 37th to the north at Stinson on the east end of the corridor. As we run through the layout, we'll talk about things like turn lanes and safety, green infrastructure, truck routes and accommodating those particular trucks, pedestrian refuge island, the railroad crossing, and transit. Just want to caveat this by we are still having conversations about a lot of these things with the various stakeholders and agency partners. Some of this coordination is continuing to go on, and so we welcome any feedback that you have throughout this process and comments on the layout. With that, I'll share my screen here. And just nod if you can see it for me. Thank you. All right, we're going to start on the west end of the corridor here at Central Avenue. There's that existing shared use trail on the northwest quadrant. And with the trail on the north side of 37th, we'll be connecting into that. Some particular items to note at Central Avenue, we are adding left turn lanes at these locations. And the main reason for adding the left turn lanes is mainly a safety perspective. What we've been noticing and with crash history at this location is that people coming up behind a vehicle might not notice that someone in front of them is turning left. And so there are a lot of rear ends. And not only that, but if people are turning left, they tend to accelerate through that pedestrian crosswalk because they're worried about someone coming up and hitting them from behind. So in adding the left turn lanes, what we're really focusing on is aligning them across the intersection so there's good sight distance and sight lines to any oncoming vehicles, as well as people walking or biking or rolling, and hopefully eliminate some of that pressure to make that turn and accelerate through that crosswalk location. Another thing to note, 37th Avenue Northeast is a truck route. And Minneapolis just released their new street design guide. So with it being a truck route, we're looking to accommodate what's called a WB40 truck, which is a semi-truck. It's not the longest semi-truck, it's a shorter one. But it does have impacts to our intersections, particularly at some of these major intersections like Central Avenue. So I'll zoom in on that. And if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand, or if you're on the phone, just hop in and I can always stop and pause and we can talk through some things. So one of the instances here is in adding the left turn lane and the through right. Some of these trucks are tracking over the existing curb ramp, so we've widened this one out just a bit from existing today. And the one that has the most impact is this southeast quadrant here from existing. What's happening is that semi truck having to make that turn from this left lane without impacting the left turn lane, since we've shifted the lanes to the south. It's encroaching on all of this space. So in order to accommodate them, we've tightened this up as much as we can to make this a compound curve, but it is impacting that ADA ramp in this location. We can still fit it within the existing right of way, but it's one of the impacts. Another thing here, we're retaining the right turn lane. It's a pretty heavy right turn lane or turn volume across the trail, over 250 or 200 vehicles per hour. So we want to make sure that we allow those people that time to pause and not worry about someone coming up behind them and rear-ending them as well. And then we've pulled the trail back here to provide about 6 feet here, just to provide some additional queuing space to anyone who's crossing 37th. We were looking at the possibility of creating more of a protected intersection here, but we're having troubles with this existing truck turning movement coming to the north by providing that additional queuing space in front. So we're showing it kind of more as a merged and shared space. I'll pause here. Any questions so far? I saw Matthew.
Matthew.
Sure. Hi. I'm just gonna make this comment as city staff and recognize that we haven't done a lot of this, but I'm hoping we can. But in that southeast corner, I guess I'm just gonna take that radius to be the control vehicle, and I'm just curious if this is something the project team would be interested in looking at. But could you do a truck apron at the design vehicle or passenger vehicle to tighten that up that way? I'll just make that comment. I don't know if I need like an answer today. Does that make sense?
Yep, we can take a look at it and just see what it would look like to put it in here, and then
Sure.
have some discussions. I know there have been a lot of discussions around, number one, making sure that we can maintain it, and that's feasible, and also recognizing that this is a MnDOT intersection as well, so we'll have to have some coordination with them.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. And then Julia.
Hi, I'm also concerned about that corner. I'm kind of wondering if it's possible to enhance the crossings to the east of that, and also to the south, except for that's outside of the project. But it just looks, waiting on corners like that, especially for that reason, tends to be super miserable. And being able to anticipate that you might need to cross earlier and have a really clear crossing where there's only 2 lanes instead of 4 lanes of vehicle traffic might be a good option. And as I was looking at that, I'm also noticing that we're not seeing all of our legal crosswalks provided in this schematic. So that might be later on, but.
The marked crosswalks through here.
If we could do marked crosswalks on Northeast Tyler, so that just so that people, if they're anticipating that, both sides. And then just overall, it's looking like we're not seeing our ramps and our legal crossings.
In this, so on this east leg here.
Yeah, and then it looks like again on the other portion of Tyler heading north.
From this side. So one thing that we were doing as we took a look at where ped crossings would go through here, some of these we had to take a look at some impacts of existing driveways and alleys. One thing as we keep updating this, we'll take a look at whether or not we can straighten out some of these alleys versus having them come in at an angle so that we can create some of that ped ramp space. In this particular location, we'll take another hard look at this just to see if we can fit something in. It might be more of on a skew, but we're just running into this existing driveway here that we just have to make sure can work from a grading perspective. But we'll note that and take a look at it.
And painting the crosswalks as well, so that there's a alternate intersection for people who use that route regularly on foot.
That's something we can take a look at, the traffic staff.
Anything else?
Oh, Aaron's got in.
Yeah, thank you. So this was something I saw, especially in the segment that's going to be coming up, but there are many more curb cuts on the north side than there are on the south side of 37th Avenue Northeast. And I understand the connectivity to the trails to the west of Central and to the east but I was wondering if that was something that you were considering, how the number of places where vehicles would cross the multi-use path on the north side versus the south side, and secondarily, if making sure that there is not cross slope on the trail for when it is, their conditions might be icy because of the number of curb cuts.
Sorry, give me just a second. I'm making some notes. One thing, related to cross slope and some of those crossings, one thing I do want to note is that we are having conversations about raising the trail, particularly at major crossings, to help with some of that, as well as just indicate that conflict. And then when it comes to those minor crossings, I think those would probably be kind of your normal pedestrian ramp, but it's something we'll take into account moving forward as we get into grading and just things of how we can try to make that with any ice or sheeting of water across the bikeway, we can keep that into account. And then when it comes to number of motor vehicle crossings, I believe that was considered, but ultimately it was really, how many times are you asking people to kind of jog back and forth across the roadway over a certain stretch between these existing shared use trails, and that kind of led to the north side being that preferred option.
Okay. Yeah, with the cross slope, my specific concern is like when you are riding a bicycle in the winter and you come to a curb, like a cut like this, it's really, really easy to have your bike just slide out from underneath you completely because of the cross slope. And so to have to encounter, like 15 or 20 of those in a stretch of a mile is a lot of opportunities for that person to have that kind of injury.
Yeah, and there are some things we can do with curb height level when we get to that intersection, whether we go down that full 6 inches or we can do it a little more gradual to try to help with that, as well as what does that gutter flow line look like and which way is it angling. But yeah.
I'm not just talking about the intersection, but the driveways.
Driveways, yep.
Driveway location.
There's many driveways, and especially as you go on, there's like I counted in the second section of the schematic that there were like 10 curb cuts on the north and maybe 3 or 4 on the south. So that's a pretty substantial.
Okay.
Can I interrupt? I guess I want to make an assumption that we would bring the trail across at the trail height, and then so basically give the trail priority through driveways, right? I'm just asking the project team. So that should basically, Aaron, if that's true, I don't think we'd be going up and down at driveways.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
That would be where we would start, and that's the ultimate goal, if as many of those as that we can keep at that trail height and not dip down.
Yeah.
Okay.
The wide boulevards also help us make up that grade on the driveways.
Yeah, so as we move to the east, you'll see that boulevard widens out to 9 feet typical, which gives us a lot of distance to make up that height as well.
You're generally out of that apron space.
Thank you.
Yep. Julia, did you have another question?
I think you're muted if you're speaking.
Thank you. It looks like 961 37th has alley access for that driveway. That is keeping us from having the curb access. And it seems like, I don't know if Columbia Heights is willing to discuss that with their property owners. But it certainly seems like pedestrian access should come before multiple vehicle access to a garage. I'm curious if you've explored that yet.
We can take that back to Columbia Heights and see what their thoughts are on that.
Thank you.
Yep. One thing to note also, by this driveway, there's an existing MCES vault. It's a utility vault. It's actually raised above the ground, so we're coordinating with them, given that the trail will come directly adjacent to that, to see how much we can lower it to avoid any object that someone who is biking might clip with their pedal or run into. So those are conversations that we're continuing to have. All right. We'll head to the east here, so I'll slide along. So as mentioned earlier, we are holding that 9-foot boulevard typical. One of the reasons we are doing that is to provide for some of that green infrastructure and try to accommodate that wherever we can along the corridors, barring any utilities that might be in the way. So it should provide us a lot of opportunities to treat water as we move along the corridor. Again, that we're going to maintain that 6-foot sidewalk along the south side throughout. One thing I should also mention, one of the reasons also for keeping the trail on the north side was if we were on the south side, we would have a lot more impacts to existing retaining walls and needs for new walls than the north side. So that was another factor that played into that recommendation. So as we go through here again, you can note the crossings, but if you have any comments, please let us know. Some of these are skewed intersections as well. So we just kind of tried to do our due diligence, some engineering judgment here in terms of where we're replacing them. But if you have different thoughts, we're open and welcome to those ideas. All right, I'll slide down here.
Oh, I was just noticing, pointing out just the attempts to realign that poke, and just trying to tee that in more. There's attempts to try to change some of those skewed locations better where we can, and tighten up some of that geometry. I think is important just to share.
Yep. And even on the south side, we're looking, some of these streets were recently reconstructed, so we're tying into some narrower street widths, and we're looking at tightening up those curb radii wherever we can. When it comes to some of these minor cross streets, we're taking a look, making sure the school bus and garbage truck can still get in there, but not that larger semi. That one's going to encroach more. All right. So coming along here, so here's an example. You can see Pierce Street, just the different pedestrian crossing locations. We've got another driveway location here, driveway up here as well. So we put a pedestrian crossing on the west side over here. And then we've got 2 crossings here at this Pierce, but we were just running into driveways for this particular leg here in order to get that to work. Julia? Julia, I think you might still be on mute.
This mute thing is throwing me off. I'm sorry. We're not seeing the east side of Pierce Street Northeast on where it south tees, or the west side of Pierce Street where it north tees. So it seems like, I guess, just not seeing the crossings provided where we're supposed to see them is a bit alarming to me. And I'm also curious, given that driveways are functionally curb ramps in how they get used by a lot of people in a lot of circumstances, what exists for situations like this to make it be able to serve both functions potentially?
Honestly, when it comes to driveways, they're a work in progress when it comes to tools in the toolbox when they do run into these ADA ramps that interact with them. Typically, when we have an ADA ramp, we want to make sure we have those truncated domes, which are the bumps at the end, and a contrasting color for anyone with low vision. And in doing so, when there is a driveway, the risk of someone entering the motor vehicle way right is a lot greater because they might not recognize that they're crossing into that area. So it is kind of one of those trade-offs of, do we try to accommodate something over here and someone might cross here and not recognize that they're entering a driveway or where they might have to land? Or do we, I think this one we can get in here. And this one is a bit more challenging unless we try to skew it in some way across the intersection, which again isn't as intuitive to someone with low or no vision. But we'll make note of that, and we can look to try to add some in here, Julia. All right, moving to the east. Here are those locations on Buchanan and Lincoln where we would be tying into that recent reconstruction. Sorry about this spelling. So that's why you can see it's just not aligning quite with the curb. And then as we get to Johnson Street, again, this is going to be one of our more major intersections. The Route 4 bus actually turns at this location. So it comes north and heads east, and when it's westbound, it heads south at this location. And then we start having our transit route to the east of Johnson Street. One thing we did add again here was those left turn lanes. Again, from that safety perspective, reducing that risk of that rear end crash as well as that urgency to make sure you're making that turn pretty quickly. And then when we were looking at these curb radii, again, we were looking to accommodate that larger semi truck, given that it is a truck route. And then we were looking especially at that, a bus or a slightly smaller vehicle called like a box truck. It's an SU30 to make sure that it can make this turn without encountering any vehicles that might be sitting in the left turn lane, and they can do that without any problem. One thing to note is that at Johnson Street, we are looking to create a little more boulevard space here before tying into the existing sidewalk that's directly adjacent to the curb. Number one, we need to get some signal equipment in there, but also it just provides a little buffer space for us to get those ADA curb ramps and grades to work, as well as just a little more pleasant experience for someone walking along the roadway to not be directly adjacent to motor vehicle traffic. Peter. Peter, you are still on mute if you are talking.
Even worse, I didn't intend to put my hand up, so.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. It's like when you have a scratch and we're in person and I think you've raised your hand. Any questions here on Johnson Street? Okay, as we move to the east, one thing I do want to note is that 37th might be a possible future BRT route. It's in the Network Next program. It's for an exploratory, and they're currently exploring whether or not it should be a BRT route. So the proposed design we're showing widens out that 9-foot boulevard to the 11.5 that's needed to accommodate those stations. So at this point, it won't preclude BRT from coming through here. And if it remains a normal transit route, that can also be accommodated. All right, I'll slide down. We're on to the next sheet. And pardon me while I slide to the left. I feel like I am doing a dance. All right. So I'll step through here. We've got Hayes. Hayes is some of those transit locations, those stops along here. Those are marked with the red T, red circle, white T, I should say. And then as we get over here to Hart Boulevard, one thing that you'll see that we've done, we added a left turn lane in here. And that is mainly because we were looking to try to get a pedestrian refuge island at this location where there is a more of a desired crossing from people taking transit to get either, to the speedway or to the neighborhood over here or to these businesses on the north side. So we've taken a look at providing that pedestrian refuge island and median. It's long enough to prevent, so a bus would be sitting here queuing, and then one vehicle would be behind it. So ideally, it's preventing any vehicle from sneaking around the bus and heading into oncoming traffic as well. One thing to note here is that we are going to be having some conversations with Speedway just to make sure that their fuel truck can access, because we're not exactly sure which way they're coming from and entering and exiting, and we want to make sure they're able to still function and provide that operation for their vehicles, because they're unloading their fuel kind of in this corner of this location. So we'll be having continuing conversations with them, and this could change a little bit as we move forward.
Mm-hmm. And north of here too, there's multifamily housing north of here and senior housing too. And there's walking back and forth between this space. So this was a priority for Columbia Heights too, to have a pedestrian crossing, and interest there to have pedestrians cross at this location as well. So
It's
that was
currently not identified for a rectangular rapid flashing beacon or anything of that sort, but likely a marked crossing and possibly some advanced pedestrian warning signs. But we're still having conversations with traffic around what this will look like. Matthew, or yep.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we could explore ways to get the median, the refuge island, to 8 feet as kind of a preferred versus 6. I mean, I don't quite have an idea where to get this 2 feet from yet, but I'm sure we could help or figure it out.
We started with a slightly wider median, Matthew, to let you know. We took a look at the turning movements for an SU-30, that box truck coming out of here, thinking that maybe if people are moving, it might be a more of the vehicle that we're seeing, especially from the north side with multifamily housing. And so that's really what's controlling the width of what is needed at this location in order to get those turning movements through. And that's why we had to narrow it up to 6. But we can take a look just to see if there's anything we could maybe do on the north side, or if we can get a little, we might be able to move the path a little bit and see if we can get some additional space there.
I'd love to explore that. Also, I guess what I'm wondering is, does the whole thing have to be a rectangle, or could it be a little more of a polygon and, be 6 feet on the nose, but kind of go out to 8 and then be 8 feet on the east side of the crosswalk? I mean, I don't know. I just think it'd be interesting. Bikes are typically like 6 feet wide, and like, I don't know, that just feels like too narrow if you're going to actually use it as a refuge. And I know it is a minimum, but anyway, those are my thoughts for now. But
yeah, we'll look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those locations where we did pull that trail back in order to accommodate that 11.5-foot boulevard for possible BRT.
thanks.
Yep. Any other questions, comments?
Hi, this is Sonia Brissett, Metro Transit. I just have a quick question. Thank you for widening those boulevards. Is the 11.33 feet lane width, does that include the 2-foot curb reaction?
That does not include the 2-foot curb reaction.
Okay, so like curb to refuge would be closer to 13 feet.
Correct.
Thanks.
All right, I'll slide down and over here. You get a sneak peek of the end. All right, as we head to 37th Place, one thing that we were really looking to do was tee up this intersection here. With the angle that it's at, people are able to really fly through here and maybe not make a complete stop, especially having that trail on the north side. A couple of items that are still under consideration. Number 1, raising this crossing for the trail. Number 2, we do have an option that we're looking at and considering that brings this trail back and offsets it from the intersection and then pulls it back toward this normal alignment. And so those are 2 options that we're considering and still having discussions at this location, especially knowing that if there's a train coming through here, anyone that's looking to get from Stinson heading southbound to westbound 37th can make this cut, as well as that reverse movement. You'll see here, this radii here had to open up a little bit, and this was really to accommodate that city bus to make this turn around this corner. And then there would be at least one bus stop on 37th Place. They're looking to possibly consolidate the 2 existing stops into 1. Any questions or thoughts at 37th Place?
Is there a traffic control there at the end of 37th Place, where it meets 37th Avenue? Is there stop sign or?
Stop sign.
Julia?
My internet cut out slightly, but so you might have answered this, but there's no crosswalk on the left leg of that crossing.
Yeah. One thing we were trying to consider, especially, is what are the movements that people are making, but we can add them. So we've added it up here right at heart. And then the question here is if people are making this movement, do we want to encourage them to go on this side versus this side? But again, I understand, the legal crossing. So we can add the curb ramp in here, but it's more if people are here, they're looking this way and maybe not necessarily to the right. So
Yeah, that seems like a driver problem, not a pedestrian problem. So it seems like it would be good to figure out how to address how to encourage safe driver behaviors rather than limit accessibility for people using wheelchairs or with limited mobility.
okay, we'll look to see if we can add that back in here.
And also some traffic control that would help drivers remember to look where they're moving their vehicles, if that's a concern.
Yeah,
I see that, like, I don't mean to sound sarcastic because I definitely experienced that. I just think that it's important to focus on the person causing the problem rather than the person being impacted in this case.
and Julia, one thing that's under consideration here is raising this crossing, as well as I don't know if you heard the possibility of offsetting this crossing to the back.
But that wouldn't address the
It wouldn't address this.
Okay,
Correct.
would that be able to be tabled? That would maybe increase that visibility.
It's something we could talk about. We haven't discussed it to date.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Moving to the railroad, one thing to note is that sidewalk on the south side will be located outside of the existing gate arm. We had some conversations with Metro, with the railroad, and that was kind of their preference, but we still have to have conversations with MnDOT Rail as well. And so know that those are forthcoming. The other thing that you're seeing here is the trail on the north side is using a 12-mile-per-hour design speed for a person biking to slow them down a bit as they're crossing the railroad, as well as provide them a better angle crossing the tracks so that their wheels don't get stuck, or if someone's wheeling in a wheelchair, their likelihood of getting stuck in those tracks is less as well. Julia?
Will there be an option for people to continue in the shortest line possible if they feel comfortable? Or what will the physical barriers be to prevent people from taking that desired line?
Right now, there's no plan to carry an option through straight across, because we do want to number one, encourage people biking to slow down and look, make sure there is no train coming, as well as if they do encounter pedestrians at this location to also slow down. And then we have not discussed adding anything to prevent someone from making that through crossing to date.
My suggestion would be to continue the sidewalk, possibly with some guidance for those with visual impairments if there is a concern about it being less safe, because people are going to go the shortest distance. They're just based on use. Unless it's blocked and made inconvenient. That's
Okay, we'll take that back as well. We'll have to have another conversation with the railroad here in terms of number of crossings. The 10-foot shared use trail will also continue along 37th Place to make that connection to the existing trail on the north side of Stinson, on the west side of the roadway. And then it will carry again through here on Stinson Boulevard to eventually connect to a trail that will go along Stinson Boulevard in the future. Something to note at Stinson Boulevard, again, we're looking at adding those left turn lanes from that safety perspective. One thing we're continuing to evaluate, and we have to have a meeting with Hennepin County and St. Anthony, is what that turning movement looks like on this corner, especially knowing that we're shifting those lanes down again, similar to what we were running into at Central, whether or not we might need to impact this quadrant or not in order to accommodate this. Another option that might be on the table is to maybe shift this left turn lane a little bit to the north, but then we get some offset left turn lanes, and then we impact that sight distance of that driver making that left turn. Julia?
The sidewalk gap is not being filled on the west side of Stinson, however? Is that correct?
Correct. That's not a portion of this particular project.
And it can't be added in?
Forrest, I'll look to you on that one.
At the moment, it's out of scope. We can have a conversation with Columbia Heights. And
it looks like it would fill that triangle so nicely.
Yeah, it's another railroad crossing to contend with, but
yeah,
that's something we can bring back.
Thank you.
So that's the entire corridor. So with that, we can open it up. Oh, Barb, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, I wanted to ask if you're at, I think Forrest, you said you're at 15% and you may come back if there are significant changes. Are you looking for a resolution from us today?
Always the question, I guess, right? Yeah, I think if you all want to put together a resolution today, if you support our option here of the trail on the north side, it's the major thing to get by today. Or if there are other comments and questions besides the ones we've already talked about, you can add that to the resolution.
Aaron, did you raise your hand briefly?
I was going to ask the same question Barb asked, so that's good thinking, Barb. You've run a couple of these meetings before, haven't you?
On occasion, yeah. I just want to check with anybody that hasn't had a chance to share. I see Christopher Hoffer, you got a question, and Peter did, so.
Yes, and I apologize to make you go change slides, but could you go back to Central? I was looking to try to find the northbound traffic, the bus stop. Is there a northbound? Okay, there it is. Okay, it's up there. There's nothing to the south of 37th. It's okay. All right. I just so the northbound bus stop is up there, kind of by that gas station, huh? Okay, I couldn't tell where it was, and if that was changed to sort of accommodate buses turning eastbound off of Central onto 37th. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe there are any buses making this movement, the north to east.
Yeah, that's correct. This is Sonia at Metro Transit. That movement you did describe was at Johnson and 37th. I think this northbound Central at 37th stop, the reason maybe it's so far side is to not stop in that Reservoir Boulevard street that makes kind of a 5-leg intersection there.
Yeah, I was just curious if there was one to the south of 37th, but because I just couldn't figure out how it would coexist well with the right turn accommodations for right turning semis. But thanks, I just couldn't see it before. Thanks.
Yep. Gotcha.
Peter?
Yeah, thank you. In that same panel, and I'm picking up on the mid-block, essentially mid-block crossings, sort of mid-block crossings between us, just west of Tyler, there, for instance, and I would, were it me, I would be crossing there every time, rather than if I was proceeding west, I would cross there before I got to the intersection. If I was heading across either direction, would that be is that a crosswalked would that be crosswalked there at that mid-block crossing there just west of Tyler?
Here?
That's
Is that-
something Julia had mentioned earlier, whether we would consider that, and that's something we could bring back to our traffic office.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and Julie also mentioned this east leg here, so we'll take a look at this because this house here does have access off the alley. So we'll coordinate with Columbia Heights just to see if there's anything we can do here to get a curb ramp in here without having to skew it.
Yeah, so Julia seconded strongly then here.
Okay.
I just want to check to see if anyone else on the PAC had questions or comments. Matt, did you have any comment or question? I see you're muted, but I'm just checking with you.
No, not at the moment. Thanks for checking, Barb.
Sure. Okay. All right.
Well, Barb, I've taken people's comments and put together a tentative resolution.
Okay.
And I'm gonna read that at this time, and please let me know if I've left something important out, okay?
Okay.
The Pedestrian Advisory Committee supports the proposed design for the 37th Avenue Northeast Reconstruction Project. We support the placement of the multi-use path on the north side of 37th Avenue Northeast, but we request that cross slope be minimized by giving the multi-use path priority at each of the numerous curb cuts that intersect it. We ask that all legal pedestrian crossings be built. We support tabled crossings and tabled trail crossings and pedestrian crossings at 37th Place Northeast, and ask that the refuge median at the intersection of 37th Avenue Northeast and Northeast Hollywood Avenue be built to 8 feet. We further ask that the smallest allowable design vehicle be used for designing curb radii. To ensure the tightest turn radii possible, we ask that truck aprons be considered. Did I miss anything that people asked for?
Not that I've heard, but.
I think the focus on Tyler Street.
Oh,
That's where, Julia, I asked for all legal
Okay.
pedestrian crossings to be built. I could
Okay.
say particularly at Tyler Street.
Or painted crosswalks, like doing something to highlight tabled across 37. You may have picked it up. I just without being able to visualize it, it's a little harder for me to. So if you've got it, ignore me.
I'll email it out to the executive committee as well.
okay. Thank you, Erin. Any other comments or questions before any final comments from you guys, Forrest or any of you?
Not at this time.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the presentation, and we will get that resolution sent off to you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for all of
Thanks,
your
you
time as
guys.
well.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you so
Thank
much.
you for the feedback. Thank you.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Be well.
Bye. Okay, well, we're early. Do we want to adjourn?
Sounds
Any
good.
other topics? I'm up for it. Yeah, Matthew.
Well, I mean, I guess as an announcement, I don't know if
Okay.
Julia has anything to say about, last couple opportunities to comment on Hennepin.
That's exactly what Julia was going to say.
Okay.
Just a reminder to people, I might try to send something out to the whole pack unless somebody else is, that the comment deadline is tomorrow.
I already did the survey, and I signed the letter, and I will write an email this evening.
Awesome, thank you. I just, from my perspective, being on the pack for, I don't know, maybe 6 years at this point, this definitely is the part of the core project that we've seen. So I appreciate everyone picking up on it and thinking through it. So.
Yep.
And
I'll
Julie,
just
this
say
is
I
Christopher.
haven't been- Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, and just, I don't know if you saw that email from the back chair that she is providing something tomorrow that I'll just crib from and send out the, basically, if she's doing the legwork to collect all the emails and everything, that's going to be a huge help, so,
Oh,
yeah. So that's supposed to come in tomorrow, so that'll be timely.
Thank you.
it's just watching Matthew. I can see you walking and you're bouncing up and down.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch.
Yeah. I'll stop real quick. I just want to say, like, I've been wildly impressed with the organization around Hennepin Avenue in this part of the design phase, and specifically, I want to recognize Julia. This is the most focused and action oriented. And I don't want this to sound like a backhanded compliment. That's not what I meant. You have been so focused and action oriented, and it's just been really nice to see. So I appreciate you, Julia, and everyone else that has
Here, here.
participated in other ways.
Being on the path is serious business. These streets mean life and death for people. So what we can do, we need to do.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Looking forward to when we get to be in person.
Me too. All right. Well, nothing. If anyone else has an announcement, or are we ready to adjourn? Okay. See you all next time on the internet.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good meeting you.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.